Hello and welcome to Algebra 1, Chapter 8.4, and we're continuing our conversation about factoring trinomials, except today they have a leading coefficient. So in 8.3 they all were in the form x squared plus or minus something. These are going to be like 2x squared or 4x squared, and so we have to factor that in to our factoring. Okay. So we talked in 8.3 about two methods of factoring, and the first one was a trial and error method. And so you can still do that. In fact, if we start with our binomials here, but this time we're trying to multiply to be 5x squared, and so you would separate this into 5x and x. You always want to separate them into whole numbers. And on the other side, remember these two numbers need to multiply to be 10, so you're looking at either 1 and 10, or 2 and 5, and notice that neither of those groupings of factorings there make 27. And the reason is because whatever you put over here on this side is going to get multiplied by 5. So in this case, we would want to put the 5 on this side so that when you multiply those together there, you get 25x, and we put the 2 there, so you get 25x plus 2x, get you your 27x, and they're both plus. So that would be using the trial and error method for factoring. So in a case like this one though, if I was going to use trial and error, and I would start with my parentheses, well this could be x and 24x, because that makes 24x squared, or this could be 2x and 12x, or this could be 3x and 8x, or this could be 4x and 6x. And so you get to be trial and error. There's a whole lot of trial here. And so if you want to utilize the AC method, so first of all, if you want to do trial and error and you want to go through those 4 different beginnings that it could be, you can do that. But this is where the AC method is going to be much more helpful. So AC, we're going to take 24 times 3, which is going to be 72. And so we need to find all of our factors of 72. So it is 1 and 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24. That's what we multiplied to get there. Let's see here. 4 and 18. And you need to just go far enough until you can make a 22 out of it. And the fact that this is a positive 72, but it's a negative 22, they're both going to be negative, so I could just put in negatives here. And so I think we got one, negative 4 and negative 18. So remember this is then that we factor by grouping. So if we make this 24x squared minus 4x minus 18x plus 3, that's still a negative 22 in the middle. And so greatest common factor, let's pull out a 4x, which is going to leave us with 6x minus 1. Anytime you take out a whole term, put a 1 in its place. And I want to take out a negative 3 on the other side. So 6x minus 1. And so that's going to be 6x minus 1 times 4x minus 3. And there's your answer. And so, if you had done the trial and error method, it would have been the 6 and the 4 that would have worked there for you. Alright, so here's another one that I would probably use the AC method on. So if we multiply 4 times 32, we get 128. And so then you need to just find your factors of 128. They're both going to be positive in this case. So you always got 1 and 128, 2 and 64. I think 3 goes into it. Nope, 3 does not go into it. So I'm just going to sit here with my calculator, since I don't know all my factors of 128. Looks like we have 4 and 32. And I need to go until I find something that's going to make 24. So 5 is not going to go into it. 6 does not go into it. 7 does not go into it. So we get 8 and 16, and there's where I can make my 24. So we're going to get 4x squared plus 8x plus 16x plus 32. Okay, and factor by grouping. So out of the first two, we're going to pull out a 4x, which leaves us with x plus 2. Out of the last two, we're going to pull out a 16, which also leaves us with x plus 2. So then if I pull out that x plus 2, I get 4x plus 16. So one thing that we haven't talked about yet are called prime polynomials. And so a prime number, if you remember, is a number that only has two factors, one in itself. And so a prime polynomial is really the same thing. For instance, x squared plus x plus 1 is a prime polynomial. It does not factor, and so really the only factors of it are 1 times itself. So prime polynomial is one that we cannot factor, and so then if it is prime, you just write that as your answer. You just write prime. So the question here is this polynomial prime? And so we just want to try to factor it, and if it doesn't factor, then it is. If it factors, then it's not because it factored. And so looking at this, we might try our AC method. So AC is going to equal 28 because it's 4 times 7. And I do need to be looking at both the numbers being negative. So we could look at negative 1 and negative 28, negative 2 and negative 14, negative 4 and negative 7. And I believe those are all the factors of 28. And so really, because it multiplies to be a positive 7, those signs have to be the same. And do any of those pairs add to be a negative 1? They don't. There is no way to factor this. It is prime. So let's look at this and see if it's prime. And again, let's use our AC method. So AC is going to equal a negative 10. And since the 5 is negative, I do need to have a sign of each. So if we're looking at factors, it could be negative 1 and positive 10, or positive 1 and negative 10. Both work there. So negative 2 and positive 5, or positive 2 and negative 5. I think those are our factors of 10, or negative 10. And so is there anything there that makes a positive 3? There is. So if I factor this into 2x squared minus 2x plus 5x, and the question really is this prime? And so no, but here's why. It's because I can factor this, x minus 1, oops, let me pull out the 5 there, and what we're left with is x minus 1, and so we get x minus 1 times 2x plus 5. And if I haven't said it enough times, do make sure, you may check these by foiling, and you should always check them. So this would be our answer if we were going to factor this. There's first, outside, inside, last, combined, gives us that, and that is what we started with. So this is not prime, it does factor. Okay, so we're back to solving. And we still only have the same method, the zero product property. So it has to be equal to 0 first of all. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. Don't ask me why my minus sign switched directions there. There we go. 3x squared minus 5x minus 12. All right. And so we're factoring. We are factoring. So you can either use trial and error. And so since we've done so much AC, let me just show you a trial and error here. To make 3x squared, it has to be 3x and x. To make 12, it has to either be 1 and 12, or 3 and 4, or 2 and 6. And whatever I put over here gets multiplied by 3. And so my signs are going to be different. That's something to keep in mind. So if I'm looking at trying to make 5 in the middle, I would put a 3 over here to make 9, and the 4 over there, so that I have 9, and I want a negative 9 plus 4, to give me my negative 5, and then we're going to set each factor equal to 0. And the last one there is going to nicely give us a 3. By the way, the directions don't say to check these, but you could check them just like we've checked everything else. And hopefully you are checking them because you want to make sure that they are correct. It's a great way to ensure your grade. You know that your answers are correct. So we get x equals 3 and negative 4/3. Okay, so here we go again. So if you look at those, we haven't brought it up in a while, but you should always check first for a greatest common factor. And so notice that a 2 goes into everything here. And there's two things you can do. You can factor that greatest common factor out front, just like we did before. So it's if I factored out a 2. Now if you factor it out front, it needs to stay out front the rest of the time, and it works like that. But the other thing you can do, because this is an equation and it goes with what can I do to an equation, you can divide both sides by 2. You have to divide both sides, and you have to divide the whole side. And then you get x squared minus 15x plus 44 equals 0. And that 2 is gone, and the only reason that 2 disappeared is because you did divide by it. If you factor it out, it has to stay. So either way, you're factoring. So if I used my trial and error, 44 is 4 and 11. I think that'll make my 15 if I do minuses on both. X minus 4, x minus 11. And you're going to set both factors equal to 0. So we get positive 4 and positive 11. By the way, if you'd kept the 2 out front, it still factors into the same thing. And then, though, when you write your equations, you do need to write 2 equals 0. It's good practice anyway. Now, does 2 equal 0? No, so you end up crossing it out, but later on, what happens if that had been an x out front? Then that would have been an answer, because x equals 0 would have been one of your answers. Alright, we're going to look at one more here. Do keep in mind that anytime you're factoring, you really want your leading coefficient to be positive. So, b squared, you have the option here of what side to put it on. You want to put it on the left because you want it to be positive. Okay, which means we're going to move our 5b as well. And we have 15b squared minus 14b minus 8 equals 0. There is no greatest common factor there. I'm going to go ahead and use the AC method. So we're going to get that AC equals negative 120. And then I'm going to do factors. I'm going to need a positive and a negative. So you might do negative 1 and positive 120, or positive 1 and negative 120. Negative 2 and positive 60, or positive 2 and negative 60. 3 and 40. So you get negative 3, positive 40, positive 3, negative 40, negative 4, positive 30, positive 4, negative 30. I don't think I've yet come to anything that gives me negative 14. So if we go by 20, not by 20, how about by 5? We get 24. Negative 5 and 24, or positive 5 and negative 24. 6 and 20, negative 6, positive 20, positive 6, negative 20. Has to be in there someplace, right? Negative 14 is what we're after. So what here gives me a negative 14? It is that one. All right, so we can write this 15b squared. I'm going to write plus 6b minus 20b minus 8. And out of the first two, we can take out a 3b. So this 3b times 5b plus 2. And I'm going to take out a negative and 4, I believe. So it's 5b plus 2 because I took out that negative. And so that gives us 5b plus 2 times 3b minus 4. So once it's equal to 0 and a product, you set both factors equal to 0. And I'm running out of room here, but subtract 2 divided by 5, that's going to be negative 2/5. Add 4 divided by 3, that's going to be 4/3. And again, you can check it to ensure that you are correct. All right, that's what I have for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. We'll get those answered. If not, I will see you in class. Have a great day.